Some years ago, my wife went to the local fishmonger to buy some fish for Shabbat. She wanted a particular type of fish. The fishmonger said it really wasn't available. When she came home, I said to her, were you able to get the fish? It happened to be soles. And she said to me that the fishmonger had mentioned to her, it's so difficult to get soles these days. And I said to her then and there, that's a great idea for a sermon. Because us rabbis in the same business, we're also trying to get souls. And indeed, it is so difficult to get souls these days. But it seemed not so difficult for Avraham Avinu, for our father Avraham. When he leaves his home, already at an advanced age, the Torah describes everything that he took with him, and it says, V'hanefesh asher asu b'charan, that Avraham and Sarah took with them hanefesh, the souls that they made in Haran. Well, how does one make a soul? How do you make a soul? And Rashi tells us that this means that they had many disciples, that they had taught about Hashem to. They brought these people with them. They made souls. They brought them tachat kanfei hashchina, under the wings of God's presence. How did Avraham make souls? How did he go out and teach people in those days when people believed in polytheism and paganism, that there was indeed one God? How did he do it? And I think the answer to this is when we look at the way Avraham dealt with people. It says later on in the Torah that there was a place where Avraham set up an Eishel. He set up an Eishel and people came to it and they called in the name of God. What is an Eishel? Well, there's an argument in the Talmud. One opinion says it was a type of an orchard. Another opinion says it was like an inn, a bed and breakfast. And that Eishel stands for Achila, the Aleph is Achila, food, the Shin is Shtia, drink, and the Lamed stands for Lina, accommodation, to stay overnight. Effectively, what Avraham did is that he set up a place of hospitality. And people would come and stay there, and he would give them wonderful food and wonderful drink. And afterwards, they would say, we'd like to say thank you to the owner. And Avraham would say, you want to say thank you? Don't say thank you just to me. Say thank you to the true owner of this world, the true master of the universe. And he would teach them the importance of God. So how did Avraham get souls? Basically by feeding people, looking after their physical needs. And it's very interesting that one of the great Lithuanian sages, Rav Yisrael Salanta, said that the physical needs of another person are my spiritual merits. If I look after the physical needs of another person, that gives me spiritual currency. Often we think that in order to bring people closer to Judaism, you have to teach them a fascinating lecture or an incredible Talmudic insight. But here we see that sometimes for the price of a kosher chicken, you can change someone's life by having them around your table. And indeed, the Talmud says an amazing thing. It says that in the days that the temple stood, the altar would atone for us. Now that we do not have the altar anymore, what atones for us? Our table. Our table is the altar which brings us atonement. And that's why we find, for example, there is a halakha, there is a law, that when one is about to bench, you must not leave any knives on the table. You must remove them or you must cover them. Well, why is this so? Because the Torah tells us that in order to make the altar, you cannot hew it out with iron. Iron is a destructive force. It has to be made out of stones. Likewise, our table is our altar. And therefore, when we're praising God, it's inappropriate that we should have knives on the table, whereas knives are used for destruction. How do we bring ourselves atonement through our tables? And there Rashi says, by looking after the needs of those who are needy. Poor people, inviting them into our home and giving them something to eat makes such a difference. There's a beautiful custom that is mentioned in Rabbeinu Bachaya, one of the great Sephardic sages of the Middle Ages. And he says that he has heard that in Tzarfat, in France of his day, there were many great and pious people who left over the following message in their will. That when they were to be interred one day, buried, they wanted their family to take their dining room table and to convert it into a casket, a coffin. And they would be buried in their dining room table. Why? What was the message? They were saying to their family as follows. When you leave this world, you can't take your money with you. You can't take your wealth with you. But you can take all of your spiritual merits with you. And one thing that we absolutely excelled in was hachnasat orchim, was hospitality. And therefore, if you like, we're taking those deeds with us. We're going to be buried in our dining room table because that's how we made a difference in the world. And indeed, the Chofetz Chaim says that there is an entire parsha in the Torah that tells us the importance of Hachnasat Orchim, hospitality, and that is the parsha of Avraham and the angels. When he sees three angels, he doesn't know they're angels. He thinks they're Bedouin wanderers. But he sees that they need hospitality. And he himself is sick on that day. He runs out to them. He says to them, come and sit under the tree. I'll bring you some water to wash your feet. I'll bring you some food. And he brings them a magnificent feast. And the Chofetz Chaim analyzes each and every point of this parasha to show us how we should do Hachnasat Orchim. The Torah doesn't have to waste words, but it takes this entire ceremony, this entire event, this entire occurrence in the life of Avram to teach us the importance of hospitality. And indeed, that is the answer to the fishmonger's question. It is difficult to get souls these days, but if you really want to make a Jewish soul, maybe give them a soul, give them something tasty to eat, give them a place to stay, look after their physical needs, and you'll be able to touch their soul forever. I wish you a Shabbat Shalom.